I said afterwards, after the game yesterday, I thought we did a lot of things well. We felt like we were playing a real good team. Heading into that game, a team had been playing well, Carolina, and we were able to get the stops and follow those up with some key scores to put a gap in our lead. We're on a short week this week, being that we're playing Saturday. Players will be out today. Tomorrow they'll be in at 1 o'clock. We'll start in our preparation and get ready to play, obviously, a real good football team and an important game. So, any questions?
Is that a tough decision whether or not to have a practice tomorrow, or that's pretty common?
It'll be a practice, and yet it'll be somewhat limited. So we'll really manage what we do on the field.
Do you kind of relish, considering the way you guys are playing, and when playoff time comes, there's that team you don't want to face, and maybe people might look at you guys that way, considering how well you're playing. Do you kind of relish that role?
I just think we, as teams, coaches, or athletes, I think we would relish just opportunities to get into the postseason and appreciate those, because you understand how difficult it is to win 13 games in a season. That's hard, and to put ourselves in a position to play a playoff game at home is difficult, and so we're looking forward to it. It's a night game, and I think this city right now seems to have a lot of different things going on. Obviously, a lot of important games with Sugar Bowl, and then our playoff game and the BCS game, and it's exciting, I think.
You appreciate that kind of as a sports fan, all the time?
We have to. I think it's that's pretty cool. I think for the city and the region, and certainly for the economy and all the people that count on earning a living that way.
I noticed that you're always looking ahead, but do you in any way look back at last year's game, a team that you all were heavily favored against, and it didn't work out that way? Do you even bring that up or mention that or talk about that in any form or fashion?
No, I think it's a fair question. I think those are lessons learned, and yet you understand in our game that each week when you line up to play, regular season or postseason, the only difference being when it happens to be the postseason, it's not a best of 5 or best of 7 type of series. That there's a finality to it, and so as we get ready to play Detroit, we've played them once already, and we certainly understand their strengths and what we feel like they do very well, and obviously they've had an outstanding season, and so we're going to have a good week of practice, and we're going to have to do a lot of things well to get ready for this game in a short period of time.
The Lions seem to favor a lot of zone coverage defense, which Drew's done well with in the past. Do you think that'll be a point of attack for you?
I think it'll be interesting. One of the things that's hard for us is sometimes what we see on film versus other opponents changes when we play a team. And so finding out early on maybe the changes or nuances that a defense is employing or deploying, that's something we always try to get early or try to gather that information early, because we don't always get what maybe we've seen from a breakdown standpoint or a analysis standpoint from an opponent.
Sean, in a rematch like this, is it harder to coach as the winning coach or the losing coach? In other words, is the winning coach?
I don't think either.
Either one? There's no.
I don't think so. I think it's another game, and I've been in a lot of these games as an assistant. I think in Dallas it was Carolina, New York a number of times. Oftentimes you end up playing a divisional team in the playoffs. That's pretty common, and so I don't think it favors one way or the other.
So you didn't play the first game, but how were the lines different, better than the last time you played?
Well, I think this certainly, I would say they're healthier. The last time we played them, and it wasn't just because of health, but one of their better defensive players wasn't able to play in the first game that we played against them. They're playing with a lot of confidence offensively. They had a big game yesterday. It was a game kind of like ours, and where there was a lot of a lot of scoring. And I think that confidence as the season finishes up, bodes well for both teams.
I know that it was last night some of the national pundits were raving about the 8-0 at home and the margin of victory at home. I know you have a veteran locker room, but do you have to temper talking about how great the Saints are and how unstoppable the Saints are and how everybody looks so good and so many records and things like that.
I think that there's always, when the postseason begins with a team that's maybe gone through it before, there's always that understanding of that finality and appreciation for how hard it was to get to this game and how well you have to play once the postseason starts. And so I think we do a pretty good job of tuning out the pundits for the most part. And it's hard to do because, there's more and more coverage of our game than ever before, and yet I think we do a pretty good job of making sure the message is clear on either end. When you go through a difficult stretch, you have a tough loss like we had earlier in the year. We handle that, and I think the same way. There's a similar challenge, just a different way.
Was last year the first year you guys really learned about that finality, I guess, since it was the first time
No.
you made a quick playoff victory?
No, I think, no, I would say 06, you're on the road at Soldiers Field and you lose a game and you come home and your season's over. And so that's just the nature of our postseason, and one team finishes on a bus ride back to the hotel having won them all. And that's the goal, and it's difficult, and it'll take a lot of hard work.
You've talked obviously into our time slogan and wanting consistent success, sustained success. How much can you appreciate that you've done that with a 13-win season, and how much of everything you've accomplished so far doesn't matter, that it has to be playoffs?
I think you're never, I think there's a time you look back. I think that you're always pushed for the next challenge, and you recognize that there's a lot of things that were positive and a lot of things that were accomplished with a season like we just had, and yet the reason you try to win as many games as you can is to prepare yourself for what we're getting ready to accomplish now, or prepare yourself for what we're getting ready to face now. And so I don't think you reflect yet. I think, Mike, you still, are driven by the challenge ahead. And I think the players would be the same.
The fact that they have no playoff experience, this is their first playoff game in a long time, does that make any difference?
I don't know. We didn't have any in 06. And, fortunately, we were able to play well against Philly. We had to bye. I don't think so. I think the reason I would say that is I think they've played in some big games this year, some important games, and I think that it's different than baseball or some sports where obviously the experience helps, but these games are quick too. When you look at it, it's 3 hours and about a 12 possession, 14 possession, give or take type of game, and it's minimizing, reducing mistakes, avoiding turnovers, and coming up with a few big plays. And so I think that can happen to young teams, and that can happen to older teams, and that can happen to veteran teams, and that can happen to, I just believe that, and I think history would tell us that. So now it's important for us then to prepare for all those things as best we can heading into this game, and certainly understand that quickly our opponent and what they do very well, and try to have a good plan in place.
They certainly play with a lot of passion. Do you have to emphasize walking away clean, keeping emotions in check this week?
Yeah, I think it's important. I think we've played with that same passion, and I think that, look, one personal foul in this type of game and everyone goes home with all their dreams and expectations down the drain. And that's happened to me in a playoff game before, and I won't say where, but so it's bigger than one individual. And it's about, the team and everyone in the organization understanding that there are a lot of things that are hard to do, and one of the things that's hard to do in our league is get to this position and then have success, and so we just have to be disciplined and have to be smart.
Sean, being that this is the second time you played it, can you treat it almost like a divisional game?
Yeah, although, I mean, there would be some similarities in that from a personnel standpoint, you would, go through your scouting report and you'd be familiar with your opponent. You would have your prior cut up, so I think that would be the same. I think that's a good point. Yeah, because in a division, we played Carolina yesterday, and we could go back to the week 4 game and pull up cut ups and studies, and then most recent 4-game breakdown, combined breakdown, and we'll be able to do the same thing with Detroit.
Is your defense playing as well or better than it has this stretch for any time in your tenure here?
I would only just compare it to this season. I think we're playing with momentum right now. I think we've gotten some more takeaways here, and we've gotten some key stops. And so, I would avoid the blanket statements, like that. Yeah, but I wouldn't say that. I would say this season we're playing as good as we have.
Why has the run defense gotten so much better in the second half of the year?
That's a good question. I think that I think our guys have been doing a good job. I think our tackling has been better. We've been fitting the gaps well, and that's been encouraging.
The fact that they're coming in here as a big underdog, do you expect them to just play loose and maybe show you a lot of things that maybe you haven't seen before? And would they be taking a lot of chances? Do you?
I think by nature they're an offense that already opens it up. I mean, if you watch the game yesterday against Green Bay, you saw, shoot a wide open attack. So I don't, I think you go back and you prepare for all the things you've seen tendency-wise and things that come up on film repeatedly, and you prepare for certainly the skill positions that they have on offense, and yet, I think that's how you start with your preparation, and I think it's a team that will play with confidence and will play knowing Coach Schwartz. They'll be prepared and ready to play, and they got in a high-scoring game yesterday, but that being said, I think your approach is no different than you would be in the regular season in regards to your film study. You can't, you're not chasing ghosts or anything like that.
Sean, I've heard people, say that Matt Flynn, back quarterback for Packers, can throw for that much on Detroit's defense. What is Drew going to do? Is that a fair comparison?
No, I think yesterday you ended up with a game that ended up being high scoring, and so I think you start if you're trying to make an analogy, you're talking about last year's Super Bowl winner, who's arguably one of the better offenses in our league, and I think that that game took on a shape or kind of a flow to it in which the scoring was high and it went back and forth. So I think it just ended up being a high-scoring game. Sometimes you get in a game and you're going to have a lot of points scored. Other times you'll get in a game and there may not be nearly as many. And I think that was one in which you saw two offenses, really have success.
Sean, yesterday, Steve Smith was talking a little bit. At one time, it looked like he addressed the bench and said something. He say anything to you?
No, he's a great competitor, and when we coached him over in Hawaii, he was one of the guys I really enjoyed coaching. So we would jab once in a while, but yesterday he's emotional. I like watching him play, and I'd rather not play against him, really. I think he's a heck of a player.
I think the ballots for MVP, I think, are due today. Obviously, you're biased, but what would it mean to have Drew win that award, or even be the co-winner with Aaron Rodgers, to you, knowing that you all have grown this from?
Well, I think what's most important is the team stuff now. I mean, I think, this thing goes to 41 writers who are going to make their vote, and I think that's removed from what we do. And certainly he's had a fantastic season, an MVP-type season, and there's absolutely no control over it. And, what's most important when you get to, it's such a team sport, and it seems like the last 2 weeks there's been a lot of talk about individual accomplishments, as there should be, with some of the uniquenesses of the passing record, or Darren Sproles, or Jimmy Graham, and then Gronkowski, then Jimmy Graham, then Gronkowski, that kind of stuff. And this is the time of the year where the focus really shifts to us playing our best football as a team, and we recognize that obviously that's a significant award, and yet there seems to have been a lot of good candidates this year.
Is this running back group going into the playoffs? I mean, is this the ideal group? You have an Ivory side, you have a guy with Pierre who can do multiple things. Sproles. Is this the kind of the ideal group you'd like to have going into a playoff?
Well, the ideal group would be Ingram fully healthy, right? We've had that. So only because that would mean we're at 100%. And so I just would say right now, you know, we're further along than we were a year ago at this time from a health standpoint.
Just the diversity, though. Even if he was healthy, I mean, you were very diverse.
Yeah, and we had some of, I think we had that, yeah. We had that in we've had that, 09 we had it, you know, Mike Bell was more that downhill runner, and Reggie certainly provided, and Pierre, and so I'm pleased with the additions we've made, and I think we've been more consistent running the football.
I wonder if you might reflect on a couple of team records that I think you set, and that's fewest fumbles and also fewest punts.
Interesting. I wasn't really aware of it. I was aware of the fumble statistic. I thought we did a good job this season not giving the football away, and we're going to have to continue to do that to have success in the postseason. We did a real good job considering. So I like the fewest punts, though. I like that. Is that a Saints record?
I'm sure it's a Saints record. It might be an NFL record. I have to double check that. Drew, I think it was.
Those are two entirely different records. Right?
Drew at one point was the only starting quarterback in the NFL who had never fumbled this season until that bad snap
Against Minnesota? Yeah.
If you were able to win a second Super Bowl, what would that say about the organization?
We're just working on winning the first round of the playoffs here.
How do you prepare for Dominican Sue? You get to face him this time.
He's physical, he's fast, he's quick. You know, you just recognize that he's a handful, and you know, you got to be mindful of what you're doing in the running game, whether you're to or away from him, and how you handle protections. He's extremely talented, and so I think that there's not one specific thing. You know he's going to line up at a certain position to your right or left, and you've got to be able to recognize what he does well. The film study and trying to get the right look from the scout team is important.
Is Stafford's most remarkable thing about him his arm strength? He seems to have like a cannon.
Yeah, I think he's very talented. He's a very talented thrower, but I also think he processes information quickly to get the ball to the right receiver. You know, and I'm sure he sees a lot of different looks. He sees a lot of rotation towards Calvin Johnson, you know, just knowing. And so there's certain things over the course of the season you get used to, that safety help over one receiver and then reading away from it. He's pretty sharp. All right, thank you.